Welcome to Turning Heads, a short film exploring queer identity and expression through hair.
Can you introduce yourself to us with your pronouns and tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Lish. My pronouns are they and them, which is a recent discovery.
My name is Nuri. I'm 29 years old. My pronouns are they, them, and I identify as queer and non-binary.
My name is Marilu. I'm from New York City. I identify as a she, her.
My name's Jay Marie. She, her pronouns. I mostly identify as a shit disturber, but also a woman most of the time.
My name is B, and my pronouns are they, them.
My name is Blake, and I use they, them pronouns or no pronouns at all, depending on the day. And I identify as trans, non-binary, and queer.
So my name is Mark. My pronouns are he, they, and I'm from Scarborough.
Hi, my name is Asher. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as non-binary.
My name is Kane. I currently use all pronouns, so they, he, and she. And if folks are using binary pronouns, he and she, just alternating between the two of them. I currently identify as trans, genderqueer.
About me, oh goodness, that's such a complex question. I'm Indigenous, mixed race, so my dad is Métis and my mom was European. I work with preschool kids.
I'm an androgynous model.
I guess I'm what the government considers an artist.
I'm a Humber student.
I'm a multidisciplinary artist, a community worker, and activist as well.
I do some freelance modeling, graphic design, and digital art.
I'm a tattoo artist here in Toronto.
I'm 12 and I'm in grade 7. And I'll draw all day, especially during math. And I'm in a band called AAA. I play the drums and we are a rock band.
I do a lot of work within the community around helping other folks navigate their transition and tap into self-love and what that actually looks like, because we're not taught that growing up. So that's a lot of what I do in the world.
Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you realized your sexuality or your gender expression?
It is kind of like an ongoing process of like learning and unlearning. A lot of people growing up tell you who you are, as opposed to letting you figure out who you are.
I grew up in Ethiopia and I came to Canada when I was 9. And even before I came to Canada, I had an understanding of myself as other somehow from my siblings and from my peers. It was always kind of a part of my awareness of self. But I also grew up in an Orthodox Christian family and community, and it's been a very long journey to kind of come to terms with all of the internalized religious homophobia and transphobia that I've had to identify and then work through. For a long time after I came to Canada, I was kind of compartmentalizing my queerness and didn't really see myself as a person with any kind of relationship to their gender or their sexuality. There was always this feeling of like self-loathing and like shame that would come over me when I would think too much about sexuality or romantic kind of relationships.
I'm from Peru too, South America. I moved to New York City in 2015 to follow my dreams, and also because I had a really toxic environment in my family. So I just wanted to follow my dreams and just be independent.
It was really difficult to come to terms with my identity. It started like over 10 years ago in like high school. I thought I was bi at first. I grew up going to like an all-girls school originally, and I feel like that really like stunted me coming out because nobody was allowed to talk about liking other girls.
There was always hints of it, but I didn't know who to talk to, where to go, who was safe enough to share that with. And so I just kept it inside. And that's the thing that kills you about being trans. It's holding all of these lives within yourself that you know would be so nourishing and so freeing to have, but you're just waiting. You're waiting in limbo, and no one can tell you when you're gonna be able to access that. And so that unknown just kind of, it suffocates you.
Anyone who is more effeminate as, you know, a dude, you have to come into yourself kind of. There's a bit of bullying or non-acceptance when you're younger. And so I feel like a lot of my self-discovery really came as I got older, like in the past couple years, honestly. Because prior to that, I really didn't feel comfortable expressing myself.
So I realized that I was non-binary pretty recently, definitely within the last like 2 or 3 years or so. I was just really unhappy with the image that I was looking at in the mirror. You know, identifying as a woman at the time with she, her pronouns, it just didn't make any sense. But I have to admit that the concept of using they, them pronouns is really odd to me. I don't know if that was like a grammatical thing, or maybe I was just honestly just like envious of other people who were getting to do it, that I kind of didn't think that it was like for me. When I started really knowing, you know, the differences between gender expression and gender identity, and the language that surrounds all of those things, I started becoming more comfortable with the idea that I myself could be non-binary.
But it wasn't until I like left home that I like met a bunch of other queer people and was able to come out as non-binary and like find myself.
I didn't really know about this stuff that much, but my friend had figured out that they were non-binary and they were telling me about it a little bit. And I had realized that I identified with all of those same things, which is when I started to kind of figure it out. And then when I went home, I did a little bit of like research about it and then just realized that that's what I was.
It wasn't until I was in maybe my third year of university that I was consistently enough like around queer and trans people that I was curious, like, oh, like, why is it that my community consistently reflects this demographic, and why is it that in these spaces I feel most seen? I was kind of put on the spot by one of my friends who was like, hey, we're going to a queer event, you know, are you gonna come through? I'm not sure what your situation is. And I was like, me neither, actually. That kind of spiraled me to like depression and like just all of the stuff that, you know, you have to go through when you're coming to terms with how a part of yourself is not only undeniable, but also like you don't want to fight it anymore. So it took a long time for me to be okay with myself and to learn to love myself, knowing that my family, my community might reject me, might disown me.
So I've always kind of felt like I am gender non-conforming. I don't conform to gender norms. I never have my entire life. Like if someone would say that's a girl or that's a boy thing, it's like, well, one, clothes don't have gender. Two, anybody can enjoy anything.
I think there was definitely something in my like early life that was very present, but I think through my teenage years, the heteronormative world kind of being shoved down my throat, I kind of just like minimized it. But I definitely had inklings from like my early years within myself. I just didn't really have the language support or like resources to know about that.
I don't know, looking back, it's really hard to think about the fact that had I had the representation that we have right now, I think I would have came out a long time ago. I would have understood myself and I would have been able to vocalize like what I knew from the jump, and I just didn't have the language for it. And so there is this bitterness.
I think the pandemic kind of had me reflect a lot on who I am as a person and like how I want to present myself. Yeah, the last couple years I've kind of been exploring it, and still I think it's going to be a journey for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, then I came out like 22 and I'm like, I don't want to be 27 and miserable. And I'm 28 and not miserable. So, you know, I did okay.
I usually go back to my home. We went to Peru with my girlfriend. My grandma loves my girlfriend too. Aww. But it took me a lot of years, you know, like more than 10 years. And now, like 2 weeks ago, I hear my mom saying, I'm so proud of you. And also that she didn't know that all the information about queer and being gay. And now she understands it. And now she speaks up for people when she listens to someone saying cruel words to LGBTQ. So I'm so happy for her. And I think that was the biggest battle in all my life, because it was not easy in South America. I'm just glad and grateful that that's my environment.
When I came out as gay, back when I was 15, that was really hard for me. And I think it was difficult because I just didn't have the communication skills. I didn't know how to have that conversation with my family. I didn't have the language for it either. But, when I got older and I became more educated and I was able to kind of like stand my ground and be closer to my family, first of all, that was like a really big thing, to have that support system and to finally just tell them like, okay, I don't like using she, her pronouns and this is what that means. And I sat there and I had the patience to like have that conversation with them. But I also want to thank them for having the patience to have it with me and to sit there and really listen to like what I had to say. They took it in stride and they've, been some of my biggest support since I came out as non-binary.
By having the support of my mom, it makes it a lot easier, and it makes it easier to even find out who I am. I've not lost any friends because of this. I've gained a lot of friends. I'm pretty sure I don't have a single friend that's not queer in some way.
Can you tell me about your relationship with your hair and what it means to you?
I've had a long journey with my hair, and it's definitely tied to my gender expression.
I spent a lot of my time like in terms of transition, like focusing on makeup, clothing, that kind of element of style. I'd say I'm very baby with my relationship to my hair. Like it's kind of something that I want to explore more, but the access to it is a little tougher. Oh, mine was an issue. I would just be like, turn my hair follicles pink, honestly. Like just alter them, do something different.
Hair is definitely a big part of my culture. Like all Black people, we have a very complicated relationship with hair, but it's also very gendered.
Being socialized as a woman, my body was never mine. my hair was never mine. Like it was always, everyone was allowed to comment on my hair whenever they wanted to. People were allowed to touch my hair whenever they wanted to. People were allowed to basically make decisions about how much access they have to me just because of my hair. You know, like I just didn't have agency. And when you tie in being a trans person, like I already feel like I don't have agency.
Growing up assigned female at birth, my relationship to my hair was tied to gender norms and also sense of like beauty. So longer hair, looser textured hair is unfortunately like tied to those things.
I think that's also something I've been exploring recently. I was ingrained that femininity was connected with like long hair, and that to be feminine, I had to have long hair.
But it was also a relationship that I had that my mother nurtured very much. My mother's a hairstylist, so she took like great care and gentle care of my hair and spoke a lot of affirmation to me while doing my hair. So my hair had to be, you know, in a protective style all the time, and wash day was very painful and kind of, you know, caused a lot of friction between me and whoever was doing my hair. But my mother would always like speak over me that your hair is your beauty, your hair is your, I don't know. It's like social capital, I guess.
I remember being a kid and I cut my hair really short. It was the first time that I kind of expressed that. And I got called Mowgli because there isn't much representation for mixed race people, especially in the Indigenous world. After that experience, I kind of had a negative connotation about short hair and being masculine and being bullied about it.
So hair and my identity are like extremely connected. They always have been. When I was really young, I definitely was very expressive. Like I used to highlight it and stuff. But I remember during high school, I was like made fun of a bit for that. So I kind of like reverted.
With different hairstyles, people will always just assume that you're something else that you're not. Like assume your gender or even just assume the way that you would act. So I like to make sure that my hair really expresses myself.
Yeah, I would say now it's like very much a big part of me, like how I can feel comfortable being more feminine.
I think that my hair is really important for me because I think it's art and it's a way to show your art. And I think that if you show it to the world will be like fine with just showing themselves more.
I basically always had long hair. Around 2015, when I was in grade 12, I started wanting to shave my whole head. My therapist at the time thought it was an impulsive decision and that was not allowed. But after like 4 years of wanting to shave my head, my family let me do it eventually.
And it wasn't until I moved out recently that I actually cut my hair to the length that I wanted. I cut it very short.
I went for the big chop, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And when I did it, it was around the time I was just affirming myself and understanding myself as a trans person.
Cutting it all off made me feel so masculine, and that was such a nice feeling. Because my like favorite thing ever is when people mistake me for a guy and call me a sir. It's so gender affirming for me. It gives me so much euphoria.
I want to prove that I can look any way I want, and my gender has nothing to do with that. It's tied to it in some ways, but it also doesn't speak for me either. I didn't want my hair to speak for me anymore. I wanted to speak for myself.
And then I started to, throughout the years, accept that gender identity can be very fluid and can be very different. So I came here and shaved half my head.
Yes.
I finally felt I had a place in Toronto that I could go feel safe and know I could explore that part of me and see what it was like.
I often struggle with thinking that I'm going to cut short and then just leaving it long because I like a lot of the other aspects about myself to be more masculine, but I think I really relate the length of my hair to kind of balancing the scales of being non-binary, which is really odd because it's not like half boy, half girl. It's just however you feel about it.
It takes a lot of self-awareness to come to a place where you like unlearn those kind of things. And it was really powerful for me to reclaim that kind of agency over myself.
I would say like most compliments I get are usually like pretty, not like handsome. And that's always kind of been the case. So, you know, when I was younger, I felt like I wasn't comfortable accepting that. And like now it's like, that's all, I just want to be pretty. Like that's it.
I love that.
I feel like I'm in more control over how much access people have to me because I can say my boundaries now and I know how to communicate that. I know how to protect myself. And now I want that joy. I want that euphoria. I want my hair to tell a story on my terms. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Why were you interested in taking part in this project?
Well, my mom told me about it, and I thought it'd be cool to be able to express myself in a way for others to see.
I hope to get a really good haircut out of this for first of all, but more than that, I'm hoping for an experience that'll just kind of like shift my own mentality.
The casting call just happened to cross my path at a time in my life where I was, I guess, coming to terms with the fact that my queer and transness were bound to be like visible, and so I wouldn't always have control over who in my family, who in my community sees that. And I'm working towards things that will create happiness and joy and community and healing in my life. So hiding this part of myself is not something I want to do anymore.
I think as well, just like, yeah, the opportunity to go into a hair-related project that does center queerness, especially as a trans femme person who is queer. It's like that like very narrow line of straddling where it's like being accepted as a woman, but then also being seen as a queer woman. You know what I mean? Because it's like so often the straights are like, oh, you're trans? How can you like girls? Why don't you just want to be one? And it's like, that's not how this works.
It's a lot more complicated.
A little more complicated than that. I think it was really cool to be able to like be like, no, I want a gay ass haircut, but I want it to be a woman's gay ass haircut.
I find a lot of security in my hair. I'm hoping that just doing like a huge chop, like a huge big change is gonna make me not care about it as much.
And yeah, I don't cut it often. So I think I was definitely attached to it. And I'm in general, like the way I do things is like I'm kind of get caught up in routine, and I usually need like something significant to like bring me out of that.
I feel like I'm very loose with everything else I do in my life, but when it comes to my hair, I'm like, oh no, it has to be this length. Like I have to look this way. And it's for what? Like for other people? Like I should just be happy with however I look. It has nothing to do with how other people perceive me. It's about how I want to perceive myself at the end of the day, right?
Current world, it's more important to other people what your hair looks like. I don't really care what other people think my hair looks like. I'd rather just care about what it looks like to me.
I want to dissipate this idea in my head that having short hair is going to make me like too masculine, and having long hair is going to make me too feminine. Like it's just hair. I gotta let go sometimes, you know, like let go of the control of that idea.
I mean, I think it's always exciting to be able to tell your story, to be the one to tell your story, and to have people want to hear it and know that that's going to be received and celebrated. You know, any opportunity to be celebrated, I'm going to take that, because I'm reminded that, you know, with policies and laws trying to push back trans rights and the progress we've made, I think I'm reminded that it is important to have this type of documentation, to have these archives, because where is that? You know, like I can't walk into a library and just find books on books and books of trans people in the Caribbean. I don't have that.
More compassion and understanding would be the ultimate goal of the outcome of this, but also having people go and see it and be like, oh, that person looks like me, or I can relate to that person, and just have that like level of empathy.
How do the different intersections of your identity play into your gender expression?
I think there's quite a few intersecting identities that play a role in my gender expression.
Yeah, my ethnicity and culture definitely played a huge part in definitely holding me back. I mean, even now, not to air my mom out, I love my mom, but she's a wonderful person and not necessarily super accepting certain things, or hasn't been.
Growing up in Trinidad is very much like, oh yeah, you gotta be this way, otherwise we don't really like you, we won't really invite you anywhere.
I'm half South Indian from Kerala. Because that's been such a big part of my life, it's like I don't want to lose it, and I don't want to like judge me for who I am, because like, they're super important.
I find that a lot of people that I see that are part of the community, especially like back home in the Philippines, they're really put into these boxes.
Last time I went back to India was in 2018, and I literally was called a girl there all the time. I didn't have a mustache at the time too, so it was like very much the first thing people commented on. I had like relatives like filming me for some reason. Like it was super weird. Very much like on display.
Got a little jaded, not gonna lie. A little like, I see people I don't know, I'm like, I don't really trust you.
And I think this is what really like threw me off about cutting my hair short. When you identified as a lesbian and cut your hair short, you were automatically like considered like a boy. In your call, you know, you're these terms like tomboy, or butch and dyke and all these things. Like you suddenly become these labels instead of just like being a person who cut their hair.
The thing is, you meet someone from Caribbean, you're like, oh yeah, what's good? Yeah, you're from there, okay. And then like Caribbean people, when they're in the people's country, as we say it, it's like they're super polite, well-behaved, well-mannered. But then as soon as like, you know, oh, it's another Caribbean person, I could bring out my homophobia.
At one point when I decided to cut my hair short, I think that it was definitely the mentality that other people would look at me and be like, oh, that's definitely a lesbian. Like, look at that, look at her, she's a lesbian. And it would just draw like too much attention to me and too much attention to how I wanted to feel about myself. And then it suddenly doesn't become about me at all.
So in Indigenous culture, gender roles don't really exist. In a sense, there is two-spirited people, so that basically means that they embody the feminine and the masculine energies together. Although I don't identify as two-spirited, I think that's a very sacred term, and I don't take it very lightly. So in my like ethnic background in regards to that, we've always been very fluid in our expression and been very accepting of other people before colonization. So I think that is really ingrained into me, because even before I understood what being Indigenous was, as a child, I remember having kind of that fluidity, and it kind of made people uncomfortable. Growing up in a small town kind of puts that into you, unfortunately.
Definitely things like access and class and income and all of those things limit how much you can have agency over the way that you present. I was experiencing what I didn't realize was gender dysphoria from a very young age. Again, class being an intersecting barrier, like I don't just renovate my wardrobe whenever I feel dysphoric. Just coming from an immigrant family, like the material reality of our upbringing was more survival based and not really, you know, a space to like understand and let your children thrive. It was more like just get in, keep your head down, go to school and come back. There was just so many more things on my plate and in my consciousness outside of what do I do about this feeling of constant like discomfort in my body. Even right now, I live in a transitional home for queer and trans youth. Their applications opened and closed, and I was just like, I don't know if I fit in there, because I can stay at my family's house and I could just like pretend to be who I'm not, and that will keep me from, you know, experiencing homelessness. Like that's the option, right?
Yeah, I feel like every step in the direction to like feeling comfortable with myself has definitely like had certain barriers culturally. Like I remember I started rocking purses, my mom was like, yo, what the hell? Like even something very small like that. So, you know, when those little steps that are to me felt insignificant are like told that they're a big deal or whatever.
I mean, when your home is not your safe space, right? And you have to like be a different person, I think that can be really difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you can't 100% be yourself.
But when I found out about the house and I applied and I did the whole interview thing and I got in, I was like 5 months ago. The past 5 months have been like incredibly healing for me to just play around with the way I dress and not feel like I can't walk around my own house looking the way that I want to look. That's been really cool. Cutting my hair was something I was able to do after I moved out, and I was just like taking my art seriously. All of these things have kind of unfolded since then. A long journey ahead, but I'm glad that I'm starting now.
But the one thing that's like also good is like, even though there are those like initial reactions from her, she does obviously love me at the end of the day. So like she says certain things, we talk, and then eventually she's like, okay, obviously like we're good. It's still like every little thing feels extra emotional.
If someone's trying to be a better ally to you, to the queer community, what kind of advice would you give?
Just do your thing, be a good person, and keep supporting, because there's not too many people in the world that want to support the community, and I think it's important. I think this community can feel really overwhelming for people because of having to learn new language, new ways of thinking, new ways of moving through social settings and different scenarios. And so I can understand the anxiety and I can understand the overwhelm and just the fear of making mistakes. And I think that's something that we need to create containers for people to even be able to name and vocalize.
I would say do your reading. There's some really good resources out there through the 519, Friends of Ruby. They both have some great stuff.
Is it, oh, I don't really understand pronouns, I don't know how to navigate that? There are resources out there, Google that.
If you've Googled it and still don't know the answer, then ask if the person has the capacity to help. We already have so much going on in our own lives. It's not our job to educate other people if we don't have the ability to do so or don't feel comfortable.
You know, the stakes are really high because you don't want to make people your practice round unless they've explicitly given you permission to do that, because the harm that comes with misgendering someone is long lasting.
Stop centering yourself. It's not about you. If you want to like apologize for me for misgendering me, just do better. I don't need to be reminded of how hard it is for you. It's pretty hard for me too, my guy. I'm not complaining about it.
And I think that they should like be careful about the things they say, because sometimes people will think that what they're asking is just a normal question, but it could be very harmful to people in the queer community. Like when people ask you what gender you were born as or what your dead name is, those are questions that a lot of people do ask, but they're not appropriate questions.
And so for folks that are wondering where to start, I think checking in with yourself about what you're worried about, because if you're feeling defensive or you're making it about yourself, there's definitely an underlying fear that needs to be addressed there, an anxiety. And so figure out what that is.
Also, just like if you have folks in your life who identify with the LGBT community, create space for them to talk to you.
if this is something that you want to learn as someone who's not educated in that subject matter, you have to be the one to reach out as an ally to people in that community and be like, hey, I need you to know that this isn't coming from ignorance, but this is actually just for my better understanding. How do you identify? What does that mean to you? How do I become a better ally for you? And really being open to taking information from people in the community and integrating that into your spaces so that it's safer for everyone.
Being in touch with sexuality, like even if you're straight, I think is super important. Like one thing I've noticed with certain straight friends is that like they don't think about sexuality often in a similar sense that people who are not POC don't necessarily understand or think about certain situations or like how people are perceived because they're POC. So I think if they get more in touch with their sexuality, even if they are straight, it's like having conversations that they normally wouldn't have because they take sexuality, I guess, for granted and being accepted for granted. Like I think that would do a lot for them.
Start to investigate like where are the gaps in your life where you're not able to see people who are trans. Like maybe diversify your bookshelves, what you watch, like who you follow on social media. Really figure out like what am I seeing and do I need to curate what's around me so that I can actually be able to normalize this in my life if it's something that feels so different for you.
When you think of allyship, it's like who can stand in the affirming truth of who we are without having to fear the same kind of consequence. You know, to be a cis-het person is like to sit with so much privilege and access. So just use your voice.
Do you have any advice for anyone who is struggling with their own gender identity or sexuality?
Okay, which camera should I look at? This shit sucks sometimes. This shit really do suck, but it also is pretty fucking awesome. I would say be patient, focus on the things you can control, and surround yourself with people that fuck with who you really are.
Keep being yourself. This life is only one. Put yourself first.
But also, you're probably gonna lose some people in your life, but it's for the best because they kind of sucked anyway. You know, change is hard, but so is staying the same.
If the people in your life that you are directly in contact with the most are not respectful, don't give up with them. There are many resources that can help folks learn how to use correct pronouns.
At its core, for me, my experience with coming to terms with my gender and sexuality has been centered around fear of abandonment. Something as simple as creating like a self-care practice that can soothe your inner child, like that is something that really has helped me. So for example, I grew up with my mom making coffee ceremony. So there's always incense burning in my house, and that creates a feeling of safety and comfort. And when I found a store that was selling incense, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that like something as sensory as like the smell of something could create a feeling of safety or home. Something that smells like my mother's perfume, or something that like something textile, like my grandmother's scarf, like having that makes me feel like I have access to the parts of myself that have been battling with each other for so long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, like, if your family doesn't understand, you're allowed to have a chosen family.
I think the first thing that I can think of that helped me when I first came out was just having the right people around me that have gone through it already, who can offer you space to air anything that you're struggling with. I think that made a world of a difference for me.
You know, lived experience is always better than just like reading a Wikipedia page about it. So I definitely think like being open to having conversations with people in the community and people who have like gone through the experience themselves is going to be key to figuring out who you are as well.
And then taking the baby steps to start saying like, hey, maybe I do want to change my name, or maybe I do want to start using this pronoun, or maybe I want to ask maybe 2 or 3 people at first to use this pronoun before I start asking everybody else to use it and coming out socially.
Obviously, it's definitely not accepting in a lot of spaces, and like, I guess you can't expect it to be, unfortunately, but I don't know, I feel like there's always safe spaces to be found, and those ones are the ones that are gonna help you be able to open up.
You don't have to come out and have the perfect language and the perfect way to describe who you are and have this like box and this little description that you have ready. I think that expectation that you should have that really broke me at times. It was too much pressure. So take your time.
It's okay to try out different labels. It's okay to not label yourself at all. It's okay to change your pronouns a lot. It's okay to use multiple different pronouns, have a preference, change them day to day.
Feel confident in expressing yourself, that it doesn't have to look the same every day. Like some days I look more femme, some days I look more masc. Yeah. Some days I'm somewhere in between, and other days I just don't care, I just wear sweatpants. There's no right way to be queer. We're all humans, and we get to express that in whatever way we feel comfortable.
What is the best part about being you?
That's hard. There's a lot of really cool things about me. Right now, it's probably my outfit, but I would say in general, I'd say it's my willingness to suck at things. I think that's like the essence of life for me too. It's like how to stay young is just to like keep trying new things.
I think that's what I like the most. Just being myself and don't let anybody to tell me, no, you're grown or you're not. You need to change something. But if I don't want it, I won't do it.
I don't know. I think it's fun like dressing the way that I want, and it's fun being able to express yourself in the way you look. I've always dressed really weirdly, like different than everybody else.
The best thing about being me is that I'm not afraid. I'm like not afraid about what other people care or say about me, what they think about me anymore.
I think my favorite thing about being me is that I do always kind of feel like I'm in my own world. Even being in a home where I didn't necessarily feel comfortable expressing myself, like the second I leave, you know, I feel like I can always pull out who I am no matter what.
I get to make the decisions that build my life worth living.
I'm very loving. I have a very gentle kind of energy, and I'm very community oriented. So I try to like pour my everything into taking care of other people. To see that kind of being reflected back to me has been very healing.
I think the best part of me is I am resourceful, resilient, and Indigenous.
Oh my God. I think just my absolute determination to always stand firm in who I am and always take up space and be loud and tell my story and choose myself, because I think there's always going to be other voices in your head. There's always going to be other people that will tell you who you are if you let them. And I think my ability to choose myself has been something that has been the most freeing thing and the biggest gift I could have given myself.
Open your eyes.
Wow.
What the fuck? Yo, no, am I gonna drop an album or something?
Wow, so poopy.
What?
Oh,
Okay.
Holy shit, that's different.
Something with a flair of indigeneity without us encroaching on it too much.
And this is why I own a shirt. This is Crybaby.
Oh, I actually really like this. Oh my god, you guys are amazing.
I love it.
Oh, this is so good.
I need to go do a music video like tomorrow.
Fucking dope.
Turning heads?
Yeah.
Immediately.